Americans watched this week as troubling scenes unfolded in Afghanistan and the Delta variant continued its deadly sweep across the country. Here to talk about the implications of all this are Jonathan Capehart and Michael Gerson. That's Jonathan Capehart and Michael Gerson, both columnists. I had to repeat myself, both columnists for the Washington Post. It's very good to have both of you. David Brooks, we should say, is away. Welcome to you, Michael. But Jonathan, let me start with you. Afghanistan, all over the news this week. We just keep watching these heartbreaking, disturbing pictures of people outside the Kabul airport. We've now heard from the president several times this week. What do you make at this point of how the president and his team are handling this?
Well, it seems as though the president and his team are trying to do a better job of explaining and also a better job of handling the situation in Kabul than they did in the opening hours of this. It is horrifying to see people so desperate that they would hang on to a roaring Air Force jet down the runway. The video I woke up to this morning of, I guess it was a Marine pulling a baby out of the crowd and over the barbed wire, heart-wrenching. But I think that, you know, what we saw on Monday with the president's speech, what we saw today in the East Room with the president's remarks and taking questions from the press is a president who is resolute in the decision that he made, the horrifying images and the news that we keep getting notwithstanding. And when I look at the president and listen to him, two things come to mind. One is he is where the American, unfortunately, he is where the American public is and has been for years, which is they've long wanted the United States out of Iraq. Despite polling,
out of Afghanistan.
I'm sorry, yes, thank you, Judy, out of Afghanistan. So that's one. Two, when he speaks about this issue, most people look at him as the commander-in-chief. But when I look at him, I see a commander-in-chief who is the father of a late service member. So this is not foreign to him. He has a child who went to war, and as commander-in-chief, he has to send men and women, sons and daughters into war. And the last point I'll make on this, that's important because only 1% of the U.S. population is involved in some way in the military. This is something that former Secretary of Defense Bob Gates used to hammer away at, right, that more people need to be involved in defending this country. And so I put all of that out there as a way of trying to, at least in some way, put the president's, I call it resoluteness, I think a lot of other people might call it stubbornness on this issue, into some context.
How do you piece together what you see this week?
I was kind of collecting the historical analogies that people were using this week. And you had The Bay of Pigs by Leon Panetta, the former head of White House Chief of Staff. I heard The Fall of Saigon, obviously, Dunkirk, which would be a little better outcome. Also from the British, the Suez Crisis, in which Eisenhower really abandoned his allies. There's a deep feeling of abandonment. So it's not when you have those examples, it's not a great week. And some of the attributes, the best things about who this president is, his empathy, his competence, his way with our allies seemed inoperative at the first part of this week. In fact, I think that there's some damage done here to the president's reputation, basically because he was elected as a steady hand. The purpose was to be a contrast to the constant drama of the Trump years. These were people that's supposed to be a highly professional team, highly effective group of people. And when you squander something that's central to your public identity, I think that it hurts.
And no question what you're saying about the president. At the same time, Jonathan, as we heard from Sarah Chayes in her interview a few minutes ago with William Brangham, there's a lot more to this story. There's a lot of history here. We're going to be dissecting this for a long time. And yet we still have to explain to ourselves, how did it happen? How did it happen?
Right, how did it happen? Craig Whitlock, our colleague at the Washington Post, in 2009 wrote a story that's now a book called The Afghanistan Papers, where he happened upon transcripts of a series of interviews that were done with service members with I think it was the Office of Inspector General, where they weren't talking to a reporter, they were talking to colleagues, where they were perfectly blunt about the mismanagement, how horrible things were going, how the generals were saying one thing to the American public, painting a rosy picture, and yet what was happening on the ground was the complete opposite. What we're finding out today, the Wall Street Journal had a story about this cable that came from State Department employees in Kabul saying directly in the dissent channel, hey, this is not going well. The situation is deteriorating. And the State Department spokesperson said, yes, the Secretary of State saw it. He took it under advisement. He may have made comments on it. So the idea that they did not see this coming, I think to Michael's point, really dings the president on the competence issue, on the experience issue. How could someone running for president on the record that the president has botch something like this so royally?
And picking up on that, Michael, I mean, Congress is going to be asking those questions, we think, as early as next week.
No, that's absolutely true. I think there are going to be a lot of questions about how we got here, because this was a fiasco of planning. There were unforeseen elements here. I would say one thing, though, having been at the White House in some moments like this, that I would like to maybe push back a little bit. It's hard. When you're in one of these moments, I saw in the interview with Stephanopoulos this week, where the Stephanopoulos mentioned the example of the plane that you were talking about, the image. And the president's response was, that was 4 or 5 days ago. It was 2 days ago, but it feels like 4 or 5 when you're in that kind of environment. You have, limited information, have to make real-time decisions. I respect people that do this job as well. It's not hard. It's not easy.
There's going to be a lot of dissecting and asking and demanding of answers. I also want to turn to the story that we just saw John Yang reporting on, Jonathan, and that's this raging debate around the country about mask mandates. You've got the Delta variant out there. You've got parents worried, educators worried about teachers and students. You've got a number of governors, Republican governors, who are starting to impose mandates, but then you've got governors in Florida and Texas, Arizona, Republicans saying no. And they're getting into fights with school boards. Explain the arguments here. I mean, who's got the right argument at this point?
I think that's a leading question. Look, the Republican governors, Governor Abbott and Governor DeSantis in Florida, should be ashamed of themselves what they are doing. They are playing with people's lives. They are playing politics with people's lives. When you have teachers saying, please let us make the decision, don't stop us from requiring children to wear masks. It's not a matter of just the children's health, it's the teachers' health as well. It's the health of the school community. And the idea that these governors are actually getting in the way, the president not naming them, but saying, if you're not going to do the right thing, then at least get out of the way. And instead, they are hurling themselves in the middle of this, playing politics. Maybe there's 2024 ambitions out there, but well, they're playing politics with the lives of the people in their states and with children's lives, and it's outrageous.
And you do have parents, as we heard in John Yang's report, Michael, who are resisting.
No, I think that's true. I mean, Republicans have a very difficult circumstance here. Basic public health measures, things like masking and this, vaccine requirements. These are not absurd or, great violations of individual liberty. They're just the normal way that you oppose disease, have become deeply controversial in a significant portion of the Republican coalition. It's as though, an important part of your coalition is just saying, well, we think that trash collection is a socialist plot, and therefore, we oppose it. It's an extraordinary circumstance. These people are responding to very real social pressures, the Republican governors, or political pressures. They're making absolutely terrible decisions. But I think the Republican coalition has some serious issues here when that's what your demand is. It's treated like a culture war issue, when in fact it's a public health issue.
And you do have Republican governors, Jonathan, like Asa Hutchinson in Arkansas, who has changed his mind. I mean, he's openly said, I should have done this sooner.
Right, and he's the only one really we can name, when it should be more than just Governor Hutchinson. It should be, former President Trump should come out there and say, get the vaccine, wear a mask. If you love me, I would need you to hang around for whatever I might do, but at least to be a part of the solution and not continue to be the problem, because one of the reasons why masks have become such an issue, getting the vaccine has become such an issue, is because Donald Trump made it a political issue. And
then you have members of Congress, Michael, who have made a big deal out of the fact they've been required in the House of Representatives to wear masks, and a number of them are saying, I won't do it. You now have senators, three prominent, well, they're all prominent, right. three United States senators who've been vaccinated have come down with breakthrough infection.
I think that some of it is a fundamental misunderstanding of what public health is. I mean, this is the kind of issue where we all succeed or fail together. The goal here is the aggregate good. Talking about rights-based language in this context is really a misunderstanding of what the issue is.
Well, it's hard to believe some of what we're seeing out there. Michael Gerson, Jonathan Capehart, thank you both.
Thanks, Judy.
Sure, thank you.